Hello guys, welcome back. My name is Nathan and today I want to talk about a team that is in some huge trouble right now in the Toronto Maple Leafs, but a team that can also make a flurry of moves at this year's NHL trade deadline. Now the Leafs are in a really bad situation right now. Their goaltending has been among the worst since December 1st, with both Jack Campbell and Peter Mrazek simply put not being good enough since then. But the Leafs have been reported to make quite a few different moves potentially and make a big addition to their goaltending group if this continues. And as of right now, if the Leafs were to finish the season today, they'd be facing the Tampa Bay Lightning without home ice advantage, which I think we kind of all know how that series would happen and turn out if the Leafs don't make any moves. So it seems like the Leafs are accepting their fate and potentially making a bunch of big moves to bulk up for the playoffs and hopefully get past the first round. But for this Leafs team, what big moves could be coming? Which players could come in and be shipped out, and what are the Toronto Maple Leafs thinking ahead of the NHL trade deadline? Watch till the end for all the latest trade rumors and all the latest news, and make sure you hit that subscribe button if you are new. 50% of the people that are watching are not subscribed, so if you like hockey, this channel is the place to be. Now we'll get into the reports in a second, talking about the goaltending, especially from Frank Seravalli, some interesting info from him. But first things first, the reason why I'm really frustrated with this Leafs current situation is the fact that they've set themselves up for failure, especially if they keep this current team pretty similar to what it is. They're not getting to even 7 games, and they'd be lucky if they do against a team like Tampa or the Florida Panthers. Even the Boston Bruins at this point might be maybe a little bit more complete. They might be making some big moves as well. But with this Leafs team, they've set themselves up for failure in the fact that this year was supposed to be the year they get past the first round, and they set their expectations even higher this time around. And it was confirmed by Kyle Dubas and other people within the Toronto organization that if this year were to be another first round exit, huge moves would be coming, especially on that top 5. You would likely see at least a player like William Nylander gone, if not a bigger piece potentially. And that's what it all comes down to. If they don't make blockbuster moves, then the team is done. But if they don't and they lose, the team is also done with this current core. And to me, it's kind of a lose if you do, lose if you do situation. And I think for this Leafs team, honestly, you might as well go for it, because this year is really the year to set yourself up for some playoff success. And I think it all kind of comes back to the goaltending for them and the potential depth and moves that they can make. Now, Frank Seravalli had some interesting thoughts recently, and he said this potentially with a Toronto and Chicago trade. Now, this is paraphrasing from Mario Terabasi, and he said this: according to Frank Seravalli, Toronto and Chicago could be a trade match for Marc-Andre Fleury. Could have a third team in the deal to offset more of Fleury's deal, with Chicago retaining 50%, $3.5 million. Toronto could send Mrazek to Chicago in a trade, plus top prospects and top-end picks. Now, we also got a couple of very interesting quotes from Pierre LeBrun about this Fleury and Toronto situation, and he said this: we believe the Leafs have talked to Chicago about Marc-Andre Fleury. Now, again, this is more of a due diligence type. This is not a serious conversation at this point, but it does tell you the Leafs are leaving no stone unturned. And then he goes on to go with a much more important quote, in my opinion, saying this: Marc-Andre Fleury is going to call his own shot. We talked about this, and I don't believe Toronto is on a short list of preferred teams. And by the way, I don't think Washington, another team that has phoned Chicago, is on Fleury's preferred list of destinations. So that is really important. Although a trade could still happen and it's still potentially likely, there's also the chance that with Fleury not preferring to go to Toronto, he could prefer to go to another team that ends up calling Chicago in a trade. And it does feel like for the Blackhawks, the first thing they want to do is make sure that they do right by Fleury, instead of Vegas, obviously, with the memes there. With Chicago, they want to make sure that wherever Fleury is going, they want him to be comfortable there. And there's a big chance that a team that Fleury does prefer potentially goes and trades for him. But at the same time, there is a really interesting goalie market here, and if the Leafs are going to trade for Fleury, honestly, I feel like now is the time to make it happen, to potentially get him to the roster as soon as possible and bring in this leader that can change potentially the course of the entire year. Now, let's just say that a Marc-Andre Fleury trade happens and it goes down. I personally still think the Leafs are losing in the first round. I don't know if that type of trade is good enough to get them over that hump, especially, again, if you're facing a team like Tampa or the Florida Panthers. I still think you'd be toast against those two teams. But it does feel like even if that trade does happen, that Kyle Dubas will be willing to make more trades to potentially flush out this Leafs roster. And an interesting trade I came across on Fansided, which I don't particularly agree with, but I think is kind of maybe starting to get to the point where the Leafs could make a deal like that, came from Fansided from Mike, and he proposed a pretty interesting trade between the Leafs and the Kraken. Now, again, I think this is way less value than the Kraken should get, but I think he's starting to get in the direction I think the Leafs will go, especially with a trade partner in Seattle that I think the Leafs are definitely going to make a trade with, at least one throughout this trade deadline frenzy. Now, the trade goes as follows. The Leafs will get defenseman Jamie Oleksiak, Calle Jarnkrok, and Marcus Johansson. In exchange, the Kraken will get Alex Kerfoot, Justin Hall, and Travis Dermott. Now, again, I think this trade is not very good. There's no way the Kraken actually accept this deal, especially with them going in the rebuilding direction and going in that way. Though, I do feel like for Toronto, trading with Seattle, I feel like is a pretty easy option. Now, the trade I'm going to propose, I don't think the Kraken are going to get rid of Jamie Oleksiak yet, and especially if the Leafs don't give up a big haul, which I'm not sure if they will, but I think there's another defenseman on the team that I think could work pretty well in Toronto's system, and that's Carson Soucy. Now, he hasn't been amazing this year for Seattle like some other players on the team, but I think in Seattle with his, in Toronto with his interesting defensive skating style, I feel like he could have a really solid role in Toronto and get by pretty well, especially come playoff time. And I feel like that's the defenseman that's a lot more likely to be brought on by this Leafs team. Now, I also think Calle Jarnkrok and Marcus Johansson are two pretty easy targets for the Leafs, though I think it will just be Calle Jarnkrok going back to the Leafs in this deal. So, let's say it's Carson Soucy and Calle Jarnkrok. What would the Seattle Kraken actually get in a deal like this? Well, I do think they will still get Travis Dermott. I think that's one guy that they'll definitely be trying to get, and we could potentially see even Alex Kerfoot traded as well in a different deal, though I don't think it's going to be in this one. But I think Travis Dermott is going to be part of that deal. I also think a big piece in this deal potentially could be a first-round pick this year for the Leafs. I feel like that's a pretty easy one, especially if they want to go truly in for it this year. You might as well go broke with some of your picks there. But honestly, I feel like that could be pretty much it. A first-round pick and a solid, decent young defenseman like Travis Dermott, who might not be anything more than a bottom-pairing guy, but for Seattle could work out pretty well. If I were the Kraken, I'd be prioritizing first-round picks in these next couple of drafts, rebuilding at least at this point, since it feels like up to this point they've had no direction. But I think it fills a couple of boxes for the Kraken, and even though they get rid of Soucy, they get an extra depth young defenseman back, which I think falls in line with their timetable. It's nothing too amazing, but at the same time, for the Leafs, it's some of those deals that you just need to get done that strengthen you for the playoffs and help you with your depth. Now, let's just say the Leafs still want to trade for Jamie Oleksiak and get that big-time defenseman, which I think would be a pretty great fit, honestly. If they are going to overpay, it would definitely have to be a huge offer. I think Alex Kerfoot would be involved in that deal. Same thing with Travis Dermott. But on top of that, I think a first-round pick is a must, and most likely a big-time prospect like Nicholas Robertson. After that, I feel like you can maybe add a second-round pick if you need to, but I think that's kind of the basis of what a potential let's say Oleksiak trade to the Leafs could look like. Though I do think for Toronto, it would go in line with what they want. With Oleksiak, he signed for a pretty good term at a pretty good AAV for what he brings defensively and physically, and I think for the Leafs, come playoff time, he'd be a big-time defenseman that they can use with Jake Muzzin regressing like he has. So, personally, even though it might be an overpay for some, I think for the Leafs, if you're able to get a deal like this, if Seattle somehow wants to pry Oleksiak off their fingertips, I feel like he'd be almost a perfect option for the Leafs. But again, I feel like some people would assume it's an overpay. At the same time, though, he backs up his great size with great defensive skating and physical results, and I think that's exactly what this Leafs team could use. But still, even in saying this, putting out a trade for Marc-Andre Fleury and Jamie Oleksiak, I still don't know if they get past the first round, and that's kind of the most depressing thing to think about. And again, we've been talking about a Marc-Andre Fleury trade and a big trade for a top 4 defenseman, a great physical top 4 defenseman, but even if you get a starting goaltender and a top 4 D-man, it's still probably not good enough to get past the first round. And thinking about it for this Leafs team, that kind of all puts it into perspective just how not good enough they are compared to a team like Tampa or the Florida Panthers. Honestly, I think the worst thing for Toronto this year has just been the fact that Tampa's been as good as they have been. I thought Tampa was going to be great, but still, they did have a chance of potentially regressing after 2 straight Stanley Cups. There was a chance that the wear and tear would catch up to them, but they've shown almost no signs of slowing down, and their depth has also come through in massive ways. And I think that's the worst thing for this Leafs team. I think honestly maybe the best case scenario would be them potentially facing the Bruins, getting maybe that second spot, and maybe the Bruins somehow pulling off a miraculous spot to get like maybe the third or second spot in the Atlantic, and maybe the Tampa Bay Lightning fall down. But that is a pretty big if. Right now, the most likely opponent is the Tampa Bay Lightning, and at this rate, I still don't see them getting past the Bolts, even if they were to make these 2 trades. They might go 7 games with Oleksiak and Marc-Andre Fleury, but at this point, I still don't see that first round success coming this year, and likely forcing some major trades in the offseason and a big core shakeup. Though, looking at it right now, and with how this Leafs team is constructed, not good enough as well, those trades might be warranted by the time the playoffs come around. But again, it's a really tough situation. I feel for Kyle Dubas, honestly, because even though there's still some trades that he probably should have made and some moves he probably shouldn't have made, at the same time, he's really in a stuck situation. And especially if the Leafs were to miss the playoffs, I could see him being the guy to get axed. But the thing is, the NHL is not fair, and we've seen that time and time again. And if you are going to get past the first round and defeat any boogeyman, it would be a great option to beat the Tampa Bay Lightning, a team that's won back-to-back Stanley Cups. And to me personally, even though it's a very big chance the Leafs lose, the Leafs kind of have to go for it. They kind of have to do as much as they possibly can to get past the first round, even if it sets them back a couple of years, gets Kyle Dubas fired, potentially, gets William Nylander traded in the future. All of that doesn't matter right now because the Leafs almost have to have tunnel vision. With this Leafs fan and with the Leafs situation right now, if they don't get past the first round, there is big changes coming. So they almost have to prioritize in every way beefing up this current team and getting them into a position to win a playoff series. And I kind of don't know what I would do if I were the Leafs. I would do the big moves, but I wouldn't feel too great about it because I still don't love my chances against a team like Tampa Bay. And that's kind of the worst situation to be in. We'll see what this Leafs team does, but I just gotta say, even if they make the moves or if they don't, I'm not liking their chances in the first round. Still, though, they have to win, or else this team is going to look a lot different in 2023. But that'll be it for today, guys. Thank you so much for watching and enjoying this trade rumor breakdown. If you did enjoy, by the way, make sure you hit that like button, subscribe, and hit that notification bell if you haven't already. Comment down below, what do you guys think of this Leafs team? Do you think they'll get past the first round? What big moves do you think they should make? And what are your mock trades for this Leafs team come trade deadline day? Let me know your thoughts. Make sure you share this video with your friends. Get it out there and click on this card for all my trade rumor content right in one playlist. My name is Nathan. Have a fantastic day, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.